Happy Wednesday, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Rocketeer Minute, where each and every day, Monday through Friday, we go over 1 minute of the greatest adventure movie Walt Disney's ever made, the 1991 Joe Johnston-directed feature, The Rocketeer. I'm one of your hosts, Jim O'Kane of TVDads.com.
And I'm Hal Bryan, an airplane nerd from the Experimental Aircraft Association here in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And Jim, you brought us a fascinating guest tonight. What a pleasure this is going to be, and I can just tell already that this is going to be an interesting ride. It's my privilege to welcome Dr. John Dulemba. We're going to talk about his background, what he does currently, but it involves medicine, robots, helicopters, a little bit of everything. So Dr. Dulemba, welcome.
Thank you. It's actually a pleasure. I enjoy this. I did do it once before, but this will be fun.
Yeah, John, thank you so much for being on the show. We did have a great time with you on the Airport Minute. And talking about we had a pregnant stewardess on there, so we got to talk some part of your specialty, which is gynecology. So we kind of brought you on here because the centerpiece of this particular minute is young Jenny Blake getting chloroformed by James Bond. Timothy Dalton is soaking a rag in something that we're assuming is chloroform.
Now, I think it's safe to say that the official policy of the Rocketeer Minute is that we do not recommend this as a dating strategy. Jim, are you prepared to back me up on that?
I'm right behind you there.
All right. We're pretty old-fashioned on this show. So
actually, I was taking notes. I was.
Well.
Oh, dear.
And you'll see a spike in your practice next week.
Wow. Well, let's talk a little bit about anesthesia in general. I mean, this the chloroform trichloromethane.
Correct.
From what I've been reading about on the fabulous internet, it's a more early form of general anesthesia, and I'm not exactly sure how anesthesia works, but I don't think I'm alone in that. I think that the process of anesthesia is still kind of a bit of a mystery. Is that right?
Very much so. They have a curtain up between what they're doing and the surgical field, so they do whatever they need to do, and then we don't really get to see. Occasionally we peek over, and most of them are reading Money magazine. But other than that, they do an excellent job. But it is a mystery on what concoction of medications they do to put people to sleep and then hopefully wake them up.
Yeah. Now, I mean, most of your work in anesthesia is just general, like topical or regional anesthesia, like the stuff that you handle yourself in your office. And
that was what I used to do. I don't do any of that now, but yes, we just use some, medications related to like Novocaine that everybody's aware of. It's just different, longer or shorter acting than that we would use in the office. But as far as general anesthesia, no, I've never really ever done any of that. And as far as chloroform goes, nobody's using that anymore, or things like ether, because they're so explosive. I mean, they're and harder to control as far as bringing the patient in and out of sleep.
Right. A lot of the stuff nowadays is mostly intravenous. I mean, they're doing things like fentanyl and that kind of jet. And you're not trying to get people down as far as they used to be, from what I'm understanding. Is that you just kind of
some of them are, and of course, if you read magazines or news stories, they go, "This patient was awake," because they not only have to put them to sleep, but they also have to paralyze them. So we don't want their muscles moving, especially like when I'm doing robotics and everything is magnified 10 times. I don't want the patient moving, because at 10 times magnification and they move an inch, it looks like 10 inches. So,
quite a bump, yeah.
Yeah,
well,
so...
Well, let's talk a little bit more about your robotics. I mean, you've said for the past decade or so, you've been working more on the robotic side. That you're actually kind of you're in another room with hand grips and pedals and things like that, operating where you used to have to go in and make large incisions and stuff like that to get to where you need to fix things.
Right. Well, I do stay in the same room, although you don't have to be. My patients would not be happy if they thought I was like at Starbucks doing the surgery.
Just using the Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
I hope it stays up.
In 2001, they took a gallbladder out in Strasbourg, France, and the surgeon was actually in New York City. So a lot of this technology was developed for NASA because they thought that they could put these robots, in Antarctica or up in
on
the space station.
Yeah.
But the problem is there is a time delay. And so you actually still need a surgeon by the bedside in case of a complication. Because even if it's a fraction of a second, the blood vessel can sort of retract and fill up with blood, and now you're struggling. There's somebody needs to be there for those issues. And of course, then they thought, well, we could put these robots in underserved areas, and well, okay, but who's going to provide the maintenance and the electricity?
Yeah.
So it was a great concept, but not realistic.
Somebody's got to take the hood off the thing to move it over to where the patient. Yeah.
So is it a hard sell for a patient to? Do you ever have to convince them? No, really, it's okay. I'm controlling the robot, and the robot is cutting you.
No, actually, I do. I put the instruments in, and then we hook the robot up. So I'm actually doing the surgery. But there are actually some YouTube videos you can look at to see the precision. One of them is actually done by a surgeon in Japan. I can't recall his name right off the bat, but it's just look for Da Vinci origami.
Yeah,
and
we had that on my other podcast. That is one of the most fascinating videos.
Yeah, it's a piece of paper that's smaller than a penny, or about the size of a penny, and the folds and the bends, everything that you make to make this origami are just phenomenal. You really can't do that with surgical instruments or laparoscopically. So it's an amazing technology that I think is advancing surgery, and other specialties have dived into it wholeheartedly. Surprisingly, gynecology is sort of still dragging their feet. It's amazing.
It is the closest thing I can think of. It's a lot like that old movie Fantastic Voyage. It's pretty much as close as you can get to operating at a microscopic level. There's a camera, there's lights, there's all kinds of tools you can swap in and out. And it's it's a real ship in the bottle kind of thing.
Sure. and of course, I feel like I had an advantage because having my I had a twin-engine airplane and would fly up in the flight levels, and I was on autopilot a lot. And of course, as a flight instructor, I'm also monitoring, what the student would do. So, I'm used to an aircraft maybe even doing a better job at some things than I could do. I mean, look at landing a Cat 3 airplane to in 0 weather. You better have a coupled autopilot, or you're not going to get it.
It's funny. I wouldn't have thought of those parallels immediately, but there is something strong there about
yes.
As pilots with more and more technology in the cockpit, there's a systems management piece of it, and there's a systems monitoring piece of it. And as you said, flying even in the simplest of vintage airplanes, much less something where we're talking about Cat 3 approaches and coupled autopilots and things like that. Even in those older airplanes, one of the core sort of principles about learning to fly is still sort of this constant understanding of knowing what to trust and when.
Yes.
I trust my compass all the time, well, except when I'm accelerating or decelerating or making these turns. And, I can trust my attitude indicator, well, unless the vacuum pump fails. Well, I can trust my eyes unless there's clouds. I can trust my kinesthetic senses unless I can't see.
Right.
And it's this constant thing. And as you said, then we can trust autopilots except when we can't. And it's a fascinating concept. But I can see easily how those principles would translate. So I'll tell you what, you guys talk. I'm going to do some robot surgery real quick.
Well, then that'll be two of us because I'm halfway through my surgery right now. No, I'm just kidding.
For the love of God, don't let us distract you. I don't want to be named in a malpractice suit.
I'll put it on auto surgery. So
yes. It's just hit the big red button, have another drink, and let's just sit back and relax.
Back to the anesthetics but the chloroform, and you see all sorts of movies where they put this in there, and the problem is if you put enough chloroform in there, everybody in the room is going to be affected.
Yeah. As I watch this, and I keep thinking about the villain in this, Neville Sinclair. He's carrying around a bottle of chloroform. Does he always carry that with him? Is it something? It's like I would think. He goes to like the hot dog stand and he's going to buy a hot dog, and the guy goes, "That'll be $1.50," and he pulls out the chloroform.
No, it won't. I believe there'll be no charge today. And does he have two flasks? One for Scotch and one for for chloroform. And,
Whoops.
I guess you'd
horrible.
know very quickly when you undid the lid,
Right.
but you just happen to have it on him.
The other part of it is that, let's say, okay, he's chloroformed poor Jenny here, so she's gonna drop like a sack of potatoes, and she looks like about 130-pound sack of potatoes. So how is he gonna plan on getting her out of the middle of this dance floor? It just
Jim, he's a man from the 30s. Okay, they can carry women. They're not like us, right?
Yes. I just be thinking about it. And she's gonna, as we watch toward the end of the minute, she wakes up in an upstairs. Well, I'm assuming that his henchman Lothar probably put her up on the second floor, but I would just picture him going bump, bump, bump up the stairs.
Just thumpity thump up the stairs. And it's funny too. There's this wonderful transition as we see the sort of the animated Rocketeer flying away over the Hollywood Hills. Then we've got that contour of the hills, and then we transition sort of this nice crossfade or dissolve right to the some of the contours on the bed. And first of all, kudos for Disney for not making this a more lascivious moment than it needed to be when we transferred from mountains to Jenny in bed. We did that joke with W.C. Fields being doubly charmed, looking at her cleavage. But it's a beautiful transition. It just folds in the satin, either the satin blanket or the pillow.
And wasn't it thoughtful of Neville to touch up her lipstick so that it's perfectly
exactly.
She landed
Looks
on
like
the
he
bed.
may have done her eyebrows too, but he is one thoughtful villain. But what I'm curious about, and there's no way of knowing, I suppose, without knowing sort of the dosage, but do you have any idea how long she would be out?
No, and that's the problem. For one, it doesn't act that quickly. Of course, anytime you see a movie, they do it and boom, they're out.
Right.
But if you gave enough to do that, they're probably not going to continue to breathe, which it still wouldn't happen that fast. I mean, it has to go up and affect the brain, and for one, get into your system, affect the brain. There's on the morbid side, I mean, we have a famous entertainer that took something related to it, Rufinol and Rohypnol actually, he quit breathing. So that's the problem. If you give it enough to put them under, they quit breathing. And of course, when they were giving this as an anesthetic, that's what the purpose of the doctor sitting there is. He'd drip this on in the olden days, monitor the patient, see them bleeding or breathing and making sure they're still alive, and sometimes taking the mask off and let them start to semi-wake up. But they just, put it and then they pass out and wake up at some, advantageous time. This doesn't happen that way.
Yeah, I mean, apparently Neville was quite an accomplished anesthesiologist.
Yeah.
He's nothing if not a Renaissance man.
Yeah, he didn't need to make money in the movie business. All he had to do is just open a practice. I mean, that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then off to the golf course. It just
boy, Nazi spy, anesthesiologist, fencer, and number 3 box office star in America.
Yeah. It's just stunning.
I hate to say it, he was almost the Bill Cosby of his day, but
exactly.
And now I hate myself. So let's move on.
John, do you have like a regular anesthesia? Do you have a go-to guy or girl that does?
Well, I do, but he also has to provide anesthesia to other doctors, and so he's one of my really good friends, and of course he's no longer allowed to hang out with me, so I only get to see him in the operating room, and that isn't as often as I like it. So.
Does he give you an autograph every once in a while?
Well, we both enjoy the same type of music, and it's R&B and hip hop, and so we've developed this technique. Before the patient's in the room, we twin twerk. So,
oh, Lord.
So we don't do it in the middle of the case very often.
While they're asleep. What goes on in the OR stays in the OR.
Exactly.
So, if the patient wakes up and sees this, nobody will ever believe them. So I think you're fine. Nobody's going to buy that the surgeon and the anesthesiologist were twerking in the middle of a procedure. So
no, not during the middle, but I mean before the patient's in there, because they're getting the room ready and they're cleaning it, and so we got music playing and stuff. But yeah, it's just like an airplane, a commercial airliner. Below 10,000 feet, it's pretty much a sterile environment in there.
Sure.
But, there are other times you still have to talk to each other and to concentrate on, sometimes it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hour surgery, to not have some break in your mental thought process just would be brutal mentally. It would just be very difficult.
Oh, absolutely.
I just keep picturing as they're going through this tricky procedure, and you're trying to decide whether you like Dick York or Dick Sargent as your favorite Aaron on Bewitched, and just having a heated argument over that.
And the only way to settle that is with a twerk off.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously.
He's better than I am, trust me.
Wow.
It is positively surreal.
Well, we talked about it briefly on my other podcast, but I think for the Rocketeer staff, you went from being a helicopter pilot in Vietnam to being a gynecologist. And can we talk a little bit about how that particular journey went?
Sure. And it started even before that aspect, as I was I was a bad boy, and I flunked English and general math in public high school. So fortunately, I was able to go to a military school and start ninth grade over, and I did very well. Then I went to college for a year, but after 4 years of military school in 1967-68, I sort of let loose a little bit, and of course got kicked out of college. So then, see a little bit of a pattern here, I think. So then I was going to get drafted, and there was no way I was going to go through the jungle, sleep in tents or anything like that. So the Army had a warrant officer program because Army, Air Force, and Navy, you have to have a college degree because you have to be an officer to be a pilot. So unlike some of the other wars where I think sometimes they had sergeants that were able to fly in aviation, especially in the UK. Right. But pretty much everybody's officers now. And so it was a special program you went through, and the joke was, we can teach monkeys to fly helicopters. And I think they did. Because right after training, boom, right to Vietnam, and I was 20 when I got over there. Came back after a year in Vietnam, and there were good and bad times over there. It was, you get to answer a lot of questions about yourself. And then I came back, and I was a flight instructor here in Texas. Went to night school and took the college level exams, and the aeronautical university called Embry-Riddle had an extension campus on post, so I did that. And they gave me credit for aviation. So before I knew it, I was a junior, just by doing, going to school. And so then I really, because normally you sit there and you think, oh my gosh, 4 years, I'm going to be at this till I'm like 50. And this sort of expedited it. And I love aviation. So when I had to go to the main campus in Florida at the time to get my degree, I was newly married. The fuel crisis hit. And of course, no airlines were hiring at the time after I applied to like 75 of them. So I moved back to Pittsburgh and worked at my dad's bar as a bartender. Then I got a job as a pharmaceutical sales rep. And, I had a nice territory, and I used to go out there and call on the doctors. And I thought, oh my gosh, I thought you had to be really smart to be a doctor till I started calling on them. And I'm like, wait a minute, I can do this. So I went back to, I did my pre-medical training at University of Pittsburgh, and then at the age of, I did that for about a year and a half, then at the age of 30, I got into medical school at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. And so when I went there, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be, a family practitioner, because I love to talk, I love to interact with my patients. But once I got in there, I walked into an operating room, literally, it feels like I'm walking into the cockpit of an airplane. A very same feeling. So I thought, okay, I love surgery, but I'll be 34 when I finish medical school. I need to make some money. And the shortest surgical residency training program is 5 years for surgery, whereas gynecology is 4. And the patients are a lot healthier. And it's kind of a fun specialty because the patients, there is a component of family practice there. Patients, you have a big interaction, whereas general surgery, they can take their gallbladder out, you might not ever see them again. So that's what guided me towards gynecology. But one of the, and this is sort of not the only factor, but along with television and movies, there's a movie out there, and I think it was called with Jerry Lewis, where he was the disorderly orderly. And he literally got every disease that he was, dealing with when he had those, pushing the patients around. Well, guess what? That happened to me. Every disease I studied, I felt that I got. One time I was studying, and my wife looked at me and she said, "Are you okay?" She thought I was having a stroke. My face was it was paralyzed because that's what I was reading about. And then, of course, going to the bathroom, I thought, I have colon cancer now. The caliber's changing on my stool. Oh my God. you know. And so in gynecology, I'm home free. So that was one of the things that pushed me over into it. And then, of course, I came down to Texas after I finished my 4-year training there, and I was 38, and I've been here ever since. But I've always focused on surgery, and of course, the last 18 years, it's been all endometriosis and laparoscopic surgery, and then the last 10 plus have been robot. A lot about my background there. So.
Oh, that is amazing.
Yeah, no, you've followed your
absolutely.
bliss. So there you are.
Before we get much further, thank you very much for your service.
Well, thanks.
We appreciate it.
And of course, I don't know if I told you this, Jim, but this is a fascinating aspect. When I was in Vietnam, I did not think I was coming back. I just had a feeling. You know how you get a feeling sometimes? So I didn't buy anything. I didn't buy cameras or, equipment to listen to the music, anything. But I did buy a little wooden statue. And I had it all the way up until about 8 years ago when my ex-wife threw it away in anger. So, but are you ready for this? I took it on every mission, and it sort of became like a good luck charm. It was a statue of a pregnant woman.
Really? That's amazing.
I only wanted aviation in my life. I never thought of being a doctor ever. And I sometimes think, did I make it back because I was destined to do what I do now? I don't know, but it was a fascinating.
It led you here. I mean, that's
exactly.
And I know that the work that you do with, you're kind of an evangelist for the Da Vinci system, at least in Texas and everywhere, pretty much. I mean, I know people call you in for consultations and stuff. It does seem to be the future. We've had on our program, we've had people that have been talking about the future of things like jetpacks and transportation and solar power and things like that. And really, when I talk to you, I can hear the future in your voice when you explain about how Da Vinci works. It's obviously it's going to. We're not at the very beginning of it, but we're kind of still in the beginning of where this is all going to expand.
Definitely. Star Trek was the guiding light. We are going to see bones out there. Certainly not in my lifetime, probably not in any of our lifetime, but certainly in the not too distant future.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be a part of this. There was I can't remember. There's the old story about the fellow that worked in the patent office in the 1890s, and he said that he was going to quit because everything had been invented already.
Exactly.
and it's like there's so many things that Hal and I have come across on this show that it's mind-boggling.
It is.
One of the interests that John and I both share, Hal, is electric cars. John drives the only brown Tesla I've ever seen, but it's brown for a reason because as a Pittsburghite, he is the number one Steelers fan. So it is.
Well, my license plate for that car is Steeler 1. I think you do know, Jim, I have a second one now. Because
I heard that you're getting the new one. I didn't realize you received it.
Yeah, and it's actually Steeler 2. And so again, there's a pattern in my life. And my daughters are driving the brown one. Mine's black.
Okay.
And I did just go to an event on Saturday. Our U.S. Congressman Michael Burgess sponsored it, and it was sort of the environment and things like that. So they asked for green cars to be there, and so they had a Model X and my Model S, and they had a Volt there and other cars. And it actually was really funny because people came up and I'd be talking to them, and they said, "So how long have you been working for Tesla? Are you one of their salesmen?" And I'm like, "No, I'm a gynecologist."
What's Elon doing?
Exactly.
They might need one on staff. I guess you never know what sort of employee benefits package they might offer over there. So you have a Model S, and then what's your other one?
They're both S's.
Both
One's
S's.
a 2013, and the new one's a 2017. It's capable of all autonomous, but he just hasn't released it.
What size battery did you get on?
I got the 60, but it is really a 75. I just have to give him a little bit more money, and he went from
He'll throw the switch. Yeah.
He went from 7,000 down to 2,000 a couple months ago, and so I'm waiting for him to say, "Okay, I'm just going to unlock it, and that'll give me a 250-mile range versus 200."
Wow.
Yeah, I have to say about the magnanimity that John did. I've been looking at Teslas forever. I've been trying to figure out whether I can fit it into my life, and the more I looked at them, the more I wanted to do it. And I'd taken a test drive, but I was thinking, can this work? On a day-to-day basis, could I do things? And John was going on a trip, and he said we met on Facebook, and he said, if you want, you can you can give me a ride to the airport and I'll let you drive my car while I'm on vacation. Oh, sure thing. And
That is the best way to get somebody to take you to the airport that I have ever heard, by the way.
That
is brilliant.
And John, if you ever need a ride, I'm always there for you, buddy.
Heck, I'll fly down and pick you up at the airport. I just need a ride back.
But there is such a thing about a Tesla, and I know my children, my friends are all sick and tired of me evangelizing about Tesla. But when you drive, after you've driven a Tesla, when you get back in a gasoline powered car, you feel so let down because it's such a it's like driving a slot car. There's no way to describe the acceleration. You step on the accelerator and you're sitting in the back seat all of a sudden. It's that much of a pull. You have to hang on to the steering wheel. It goes as far as you want. People worry about range and things, but I can't imagine going as far as the battery can take you. And we have in Texas, we have an electric plan that you can get free nights. So if you plug in overnight, you get free fuel for the rest of the life of your car. And you can drive across the country. The newer ones, they charge a nominal fee for recharging as you go. Right. Even though it's a more expensive car than your standard gas car, over the operating cost of it it's ridiculously cheap. Yeah. No more oil changes, no more fan belts and all that jazz. I'm preaching. I know I'm preaching to the choir, John, but it's just
okay. Well, the thing is, I have both of my cars have lifetime, as far as the life of the car is, free charging at the Tesla chargers. And so I live in an apartment and I don't have a way to charge. I only get free charging, and it's about 35 miles each way for me to work. I live in Plano, Texas, and drive to a place called Denton, Texas. So I'm always charging, but it's free. My daughter is driving from Denton to Arlington, and there's some now chargers in Arlington, and she's using my brown car, and it was killing her in gasoline, and now she's charging in Denton and charging in Arlington, charging in Denton, charging in Arlington. It's free.
You have to change your whole thinking about it, because it's more like the way you keep an iPhone. You just kind of plug in at night, or if you plug in and charge it up when you're on your downtime. It's such a change in your life. It's such a simplification in your life. But anyway, what my suggestion would be for listeners, if you're near a Tesla place, sign up for a test drive and try it. Although it will ruin your life, because then you'll want a Tesla.
I was going to say I'm going to have to explain to my wife in the morning why I've suddenly gone over to their website and made a deposit tonight. and all I could tell her is, I don't know, honey, the cool kids each have them, so I don't know.
But honey, he's a gynecologist. He knows these things.
And it is, because it's fun for me, because I no longer, especially on the highways, drive my car. I'm drinking my coffee, and I'm like being a flight instructor again, letting the student drive it. You got to be alert in case there's a problem, but it's driving. Even traffic, no traffic, it'll change lanes if I put the turn signal on its own. I mean, it's
there's a thing called the Tesla grin, and when you're driving a Tesla, you get this stupid grin on your face that you're like, this is amazing, this is the future, this is like there should be like a flux capacitor in the back seat. That's the only way to describe it.
I'm just trying to figure out. I want to see the Da Vinci robot driving the Tesla with you in the back, John. I think that would be pretty spectacular.
Or the Tesla doing the surgery.
Well, there you go.
Yes.
Yeah. Just don't let the bosses ever see that.
Right.
Just make sure you're there. Oh no, it's me. I'm still here and in charge. Ignore the car in the operating room.
Is she out? Okay, bring in the Tesla.
Exactly. Oh, she's not out? Get more chloroform. Where's Timothy Dalton?
Exactly.
Wow. Well, this has been an illuminating. We haven't talked that much about the Rocketeer, but this has been a very illuminating
another
minute.
fascinating ride.
I do love the scene. One thing I do love in this scene, the little bit of special effects here, is that scene of the Rocketeer flying over what would later be where the Getty Museum is in
isn't
LA.
that gorgeous? You see the Egyptian theater down there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's just that two axis turn where he's coming out of one axis, the Hollywood flies toward the camera. That's a very typical ILM, Industrial Light and Magic picture, where they use two axes to fly in and out. And what it does is, if you have a little model like that Rocketeer fellow, even though he seems to be moving from one large panoramic view to another. He doesn't, if you just look at the Rocketeer himself, he only moves a little bit from the middle right to the middle left. And it's the background that's doing all the heavy lifting there. So it's just a very nice use of a panorama. So anyway, that was a little bit of special effects, but it's about the only film effect that's really big in this. Well, that and the matching scene of how much the Hollywood Hills look like satin sheets.
That was I found that fascinating. I really did. I mean, wow! Oh look, it's the bed.
It was just a beautiful little touch.
Yeah.
Yes, and we get to wind up with the perfectly coiffed, perfectly makeup Jennifer
Right.
Connelly getting out of
After
bed.
anesthetized.
Yes.
Yes.
But she's lit a fire for her, for crying out loud. I mean,
This is the best recovery.
cares.
Yeah, the best recovery room ever. Yeah.
As date rapists go, I guess Timothy Dalton is among the more considerate.
He's just a charming kidnapper. Well, John, thank you so much for being on our show. As I have more podcasts, I will be calling you back for some technical information. And for folks, we do have a brief bio of John's work there. Really, if you have work or need, or if your OBGYN people don't know about Da Vinci, turn them on to that, because it is an amazing thing, and John is quite an evangelist here in Texas for this product. Every time I go and look up your stuff on websites and things, I'm just amazed at what they can do. We will have a link to the origami, the microscopic origami, which is astonishing, on this episode page. For folks wanting to follow along on the conversation, we have a lot of places you can do this in social media. You can find us on Twitter at Rocketeer Minute. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Rocketeer Minute. Go to the big site, rocketeerminute.com, and catch up on all of our previous episodes. We are always available on iTunes and Google Play. Just go there, type in Rocketeer Minute, and click subscribe, and you get this episode and previous ones delivered hot and fresh every morning. Join us tomorrow as we find out what Jenny's going to do as she's snooping around in Neville's evil lair. But we'll see you here tomorrow on the Rocketeer Minute. So until next time, over and out.
Thank you.
Go get him, kid.